Question number 9, Kevin Hague.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Health and asks, has he asked Health Promotion Agency board member Katherine Rich whether she ever used the services of Public Relations Advisor Carrick Graham to write attacks on public health advocates and researchers which were published on the whale oil blog? If not, why not?
Honourable Dr Jonathan Coleman.
No, because as Minister of Health, I'm focusing on the things that matter to New Zealanders.
Order. Supplementary question, Kevin Hague.
Will he investigate the serious allegations that Katherine Rich hired Public Relations Advisor Carrick Graham to write attacks on public health experts which were published on the whale oil blog?
Honourable Dr Jonathan Coleman.
Mr. Speaker, I have asked my office to have a look at the whale oil blog to see if they can find any evidence of ex or current members of Parliament using that blog to attack others. The only document they were able to come up with is a guest editorial dated March the 2nd, 2013, written by one Kevin Hague MP.
Supplementary.
Point of order.
Order. Point of order, Dr Jonathan Coleman.
Mr. Speaker, I seek leave to table a guest editorial written by Kevin Hague.
No, order. Order. If it's available on a blog, it's available to all members.
Supplementary.
Order. Order. Supplementary question, Kevin Hague.
How serious would an allegation against Katherine Rich have to be before he asked her whether it was true or not?
Honourable Dr Jonathan Coleman.
Look, I think it would be very serious if an ex or current member of Parliament was using the whale oil blog to attack others, and that's why, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to table this guest editorial.
Order. We've already been through that issue.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Kevin Hague.
Does he agree that the important work of the Health Promotion Agency in reducing harm to New Zealanders from tobacco, alcohol and unhealthy foods would be undermined if a board member wearing another hat were to be involved in attacks on public health experts in these areas?
Honourable Dr Jonathan Coleman.
Mr. Speaker, it's always undermining when ex or current members of Parliament use blogs to attack others, and I think we've all had enough of dirty politics, and it's not nice to have that reminder today of Mr. Hague's previous involvement in just such a practice.
Supplementary.
Order. Order. Supplementary question, Kevin Hague.
Does he agree that if the allegations against Katherine Rich are true, then this would be incompatible with her continuing to serve as a member of the board of the Health Promotion Agency?
Order. Honourable Dr Jonathan Coleman.
What I do agree with is that it's incompatible for Mr. Hague to ask these questions with him being the author of a guest editorial on the whale oil blog attacking
Mr.
others.
Speaker.
Point of order. 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 Point of order, Kevin Hague.
Mr. Speaker, the questions that I have asked have been ones that have not been politically loaded in any way at all, and they deserve some answers, sir. And this minister has failed to provide any at all.
Order.
Every answer has just been a swipe at me.
Order. Order. I can't accept that the questions asked haven't been politically loaded. I think in the case of the last question asked, I think there's a reasonable point that the question wasn't addressed by the Minister. I'm going to invite Kevin Hague to ask the last questions. As for the others, I think they've been answered satisfactorily. They've been addressed, and I'll allow the member the benefit of doubt with regards to the last question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister agree that if the allegations against Katherine Rich are true, then this would be incompatible with her continuing to serve on the board of the Health Promotion Agency?
Honourable Dr Jonathan Coleman.
Mr. Speaker, I disagree with the assertions in his question.
Supplementary question, Dr Megan Woods.
Thank you. Why did he wait until the 23rd of October 2014, the date he had to answer his first oral question on the topic in the House, to check with the chair of the Health Promotions Agency whether Katherine Rich had conducted herself as an ethical member of the board?
Honourable Dr
Speaker,
Jonathan
because
Collins.
I was too busy getting around the health sector, focusing on the issues that matter to New Zealanders, rather than wallowing in this trivia.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, Dr Megan Woods.
When did he or his predecessor first have concerns raised with him about a potential conflict of interest or allegations of misconduct by Katherine Rich?
Honourable Dr Jonathan
Well,
Collins.
as I recall, it was on the 23rd of October when Kevin Hague asked the first of his 32 questions on this topic, and he hasn't asked a question on anything else to do with health, this Parliament.
Order. Question number 10, Honourable Damien O'Connor.